Good afternoon, and welcome to another DHTV Live. Today's topic will be esports through a pandemic and the next normal. We have some great presenters coming out today. We've got Bubba Gaddard, Executive Director of Varsity Esports Foundation, Connor Alney, Executive Director of Esports at Ottawa University, and Chris Phillips, D&H Technical Enablement Supervisor. And I'm Keith Quinlan, Senior Vendor Business Manager at D&H. Bubba's going to be starting us off, but before we do that, let me push out a poll question real fast to y'all to get an idea of how much you guys all know about esports. Give you all a second to answer on that. And while you guys are filling that out, I'm going to hand it off to Bubba, and they'll let you guys know what Varsity Esports Foundation is all about and what they do. Take it away, Bubba.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We are really excited to be here. Like I said, my name is Bubba Gaddard, and I am the Executive Director for the Varsity Esports Foundation, and we're out of Kansas City. And we just absolutely love our partnership with D&H because we get to talk about fun stuff that we love and we're passionate about, which is esports, and especially esports in education, either K-12 or the collegiate space. And just quick overview about me and why I kind of know a little bit about a little esports stuff is worked in the nonprofit world for over 20 years in traditional sports, and I'm about 3-4 years now. I've been in esports, and I've been a nerd my whole life. My dad worked at Radio Shack when I was a kid. So I like to play video games, and I definitely like to help students and educate students. And our foundation is a nonprofit 501c3 charity. We really focus on the pipeline and helping as many students as possible, especially disenfranchised students in low-income areas, whether it be urban or rural. We noticed when this organization was created that there was access for students in suburbs and schools in suburbs to have the ability to have esport clubs. And there's about 3,000 esport clubs across the country right now in high schools. And we noticed a lot of those were suburban. And so the foundation we created with a group of folks and to really support that urban core, because the disenfranchised students, we know we want to support them with access to internet, devices, grants, scholarships, and especially STEM education through esport clubs. We have been real happy to be able to support $300,000 in scholarships over the last year for students, and it's all through esports competition and merit-based scholarships through different partners like eFuse or High School Esports League, and just happy to really be a part of the ecosystem and helping shape it. But yeah, go ahead, Connor. Tell about yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. My name is Connor Alney. I go by Coach Alney online. I'll give you guys a breakdown of my background and I'm really curious to see the poll questions to know a little bit about how to gauge what we talk about when it comes to esports. But a little bit about me. Back in 2013, I was just starting out in esports. I was originally a Call of Duty player. I worked really hard to try to go pro. Ultimately, didn't pan out for me, but it was just a career that I was super excited about from all the competitions I got to be a part of, and I wanted to continue growing. So I actually ended up maxing out my credit cards, touring the country, and hosting esports tournaments. So I started out with Call of Duty, Halo, Super Smash Brothers, Overwatch. Really just wanted to make sure I was providing opportunities for kids to be able to learn about esports and to have fun. So I traveled around for a while doing that. I ultimately took that business and turned it into a brick and mortar store, which was an esports training facility to allow teams to come in and actually get coaching and compete in regular tournaments and be able to actually play together in a team-like setting. Ran that for a little while, graduated college, and at the same time, college esports started to take off and was recruited to join Ottawa University to kick off their varsity esports program. So I started as their first head coach, which is where my name Coach Alney comes from. And built up that program. We built a 200-person spectator arena with full broadcasting functions. It was an amazing space, and we're really proud of it. And yeah, started growing that team, eventually moved up to executive director of that program. And that's when I took opportunity to come work for Bubba at the Varsity Esports Foundation to help spread our message about esports and education. On the other end of things, I've also been really involved with content creation and social media. I've grown my personal brand to over 300,000 followers now, and I've gotten to work with some professional teams and orgs, in particular in the Call of Duty League, which is super exciting, on content creation and sponsorships and things like that. So that's a little bit about my I suppose, expertise or realm of knowledge. Okay, cool. It looks like we got the answers to this poll. So about half the people in here know what esports is, some very familiar, and a couple that have no idea what it is. So I'll just say this, and then we'll move on, Bubba, and I'll let you start. Essentially, esports, and the difference between esports and like video games is really just competition. So what esports is when you take competitive video game titles and you put players on a team or sometimes individually, but you sign them up for tournaments and they're actually competing just like you would in a traditional sport. That's essentially the difference, is when you structure it, you give it rules, and you enter into a tournament-like setting, that's when video games becomes esports. So with that, Bubba, if you want to take off on what we have prepared today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Connor. I love seeing this poll, because we do so many of these podcasts, and it's fun to get engagement from the audience, and it's fun actually seeing 61 people in the attendee. Like, oh, hello, Tyler, how are you, sir? Seen some cool people we know that are awesome, that are great partners of D&H. Elliot Levine, hello, sir. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm on a Twitch chat right now. Hey, guys, how's it going? Oh, Rhonda Hubbard. Do we know her? Anyways. Yeah, lots of cool people. So thanks for being here today, guys. And I'll go ahead and click over to the new slide. The next slide, I'll read this to you. It kind of got reformatted a little funny. But as we know, there's a pandemic going on in the world, and when we think about activities and traditional sports, we notice that a lot of things have shut down, and a lot of sports are trying to pick back up. Well, esports is one of those things that's definitely resilient, and everything we've all learned in education and seen in kind of every industry is we've had to adapt or create. I mean, even my wife as a minister, they weren't really adapting online teaching. They were creating, and I think a lot of us were all creating starting in March, April, new ways to reach people and new ways to sell things, right? Or engage with our customers, or our clients, or people that like us as a nonprofit who we work with, in a social aspect. And I look at things like esports being a very big, resilient industry, especially in the education space, because in the education space, kids were already playing in schools, middle school, high school, and even college, and we'll talk about it a little more. And they were already able to play at home, and not just much as at school, but being able to play at home. So when we look at this report that just came out 2 weeks ago, Twitch viewership has just skyrocketed. I remember the first 2 weeks of when COVID hit, around the heavily, and things started to shut down here in the States, and the number was like 75% of gaming has gone up. And obviously we know the stats on Netflix and all this stuff, all the things we should have bought stock in, like Charmin and Zoom and Netflix in February. The viewership of things has gone up because we're home more. And I think we look at obviously up 50% from the first quarter, which you can see April, almost 2 billion viewership increase there in April and May compared to last year is up 60%. And when I talk about that, and I talk about viewership, really when I look at maybe the downside of the pandemic is things are going up in number of hours played, addictions are up, mental health issues, weight gain, depression. And I really look at escapism through gaming addiction was magnified. I mean, a lot of things were magnified, as a nonprofit that really focuses on digital citizenship and diversity and inclusion and suicide prevention and health and wellness. We have so many great partners where we can help educate people about the industry as much as esports literacy is there. We really want to make sure gamers aren't playing a lot, because when kids got out of school and they weren't in school anymore, they were playing 14 hours a day. Well, we said, hey, instead of playing 14, play 7 and hang out with your family. And I think the last thing I'll wrap up here in this kind of esports pandemic on this side of, addictions and mental health issues and weight gain and health issues. We already knew this was a stigma that esports has had, that, stay in the basement, drink soda, eat chips. And that's a common stigma that's perpetuated by society. And I look at how COVID, accelerated that to a high rate. But I also see, because of things like esports in schools with guidance from teachers and coaches and sponsors, we know that GPA goes up and attendance goes up, and the ability for people to have belonging is there, and they want to eat healthy. The kids want to eat healthy, and they want to eat dinner with their families. All those things are important. So they had some actually better practice on that rather than just having the digital babysitter around. So I don't know if you want to add anything about how Connor, or if you have any questions, Keith, or if there's any other questions here in the chat.
I was going to drop out another poll question really fast to see what percentages of schools are interested in esports right now.
And Bubba, I wanted to jump in here real quick and ask, from what I've heard about esports athletes, they do as much training themselves physically in terms of working out, eating right, that stuff, as an actual athlete. So esports programs kind of foster that mindset. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yeah, Connor, you want to go into that and maybe talk about your school?
Yeah, so physical activity is still extremely important when it comes to esports. For example, at my school in the program we started, it's an athletic program. It falls under athletics. And so part of that is working out 3 times a week. We have trainers that are at the school that's obviously trained with the athletes at the school, and our esports athletes are no exception. What they're training for can be slightly different. Obviously, esports athletes aren't trying to bulk up or build muscle mass like a football player would. But physical activity, making sure that you're healthy, plays an incredibly important role in decision-making, reflex time, all the things that are really important. When we talk about esports athletes, one of the metrics that we use is decisions per minute. And so that's just how many choices and clicks and things an esports athlete has to do. The normal person playing a video game will make between 30 to 75 decisions per minute as an average gamer. A professional athlete is sometimes pumping out 400 to 600 decisions per minute to be able to compete at that top level. And so to be able to do that, your mind has to be very clear, your body has to be intact, and your reflex response time, muscle memory is all very, very important. And that comes with physical activity. And so, 100%, that's extremely important. I also want to throw in, Bubba, with what you were talking about, there was a lot of downsides, and obviously a lot of downsides in general with the pandemic. But some of the cool things that we started to see is parents and kids actually seeing the benefits of video games through collaboration and communication. There were some really cool stories that came out. There was one of these friends who threw a virtual birthday party for a kid they met on Fortnite because it was his birthday and he couldn't have any friends over. It's been proven as a way that these kids stayed connected with their friends from school, long distance relatives, friends that moved away. There's been so many incredible stories showing that video games is actually a great way to collaborate and bring people together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. What I've been reluctant to say over the past few months is trying to show the positive side of it, because everybody's so down about COVID, and you get into this, well, let me tell you all the positive things that are coming out. There's a lot of byproduct because of what Connor just mentioned, the byproduct from the ability to stay, let's look at the micro, right? My interaction with my kids, even though they're there, I got 3 little boys, they're loud, they're crazy, they're always running around, and they're a lot to handle. I got a lot more time with them, a lot more interaction. My wife spending more time, there's some positives around that. Maybe some people are introverted, they don't want to hang out as much. But I do absolutely think esports has also been a very big benefit to gaming in general. The connection. There's a lot of stuff that, like I said, magnified in the unhealthy ways, but the ability to connect when you couldn't. And I'll give an example here. My men's group that we usually meet with, all play Call of Duty together like nightly now. Like that's how we hang out together. And Connor and I play, and he carries me because I'm trash, but which is true. And he pretty much talks smack the whole time, which is also true. But
how's Connor's back after carrying you all night?
He has to pay for my chiropractor nowadays.
Okay.
But yeah, there's the positive around it is the interaction. We've always known the interaction of globalization through video games and connection has been there. But now that we're all a little more available, then it's really increased on the positive for sure. But yeah, that's
the results of that poll.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing that now. So looks like the biggest number is 0 to 25% so far are interested, but a lot in that 26 to 50% range as well. That's pretty solid numbers.
So it sounds like we need to help you guys sell it more because we believe in it.
Yeah, that's it's nice to see these numbers, and especially some numbers in the 76 to 100% range. That's incredible, but it also shows that we have a lot of work to do, which is a good thing that you guys are all on this call. Me and Bubba talk about it all the time. If you don't know why esports in high school is so important, maybe I'll take a little time to talk about it, because when you think about a traditional high school experience, really, high school is designed to be a good time for the genetically gifted athletic kids. A lot of your time in high school is spent looking up to the football team or really sports. That's what makes or breaks your high school experience. And if you don't like those sports, if you don't want to compete in those sports, or you don't like the physical, the getting hurt or being involved in that kind of stuff, there's really not much for you to do in high school. And so a lot of times you just kind of fall through the cracks and you're just ready to move on. And that's really disappointing, because esports is an opportunity to engage those kids. What we've seen is that when an esports program is added to a high school, it can be as high as 86% of the kids that get involved have never been involved with anything else at their school. These are kids that are just completely falling through the cracks. And when they join these programs, GPA goes up, engagement goes up, graduation rate goes up, because for the first time they have a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose to be there, to try. And so you can do things like with your esports club, you can add a GPA requirement that says, hey, you guys have to have a 2.5, 3.0 GPA to be able to compete. And these kids will do it, because most of the time it's not that they don't have the brains to pull off a higher GPA. They're just not trying because they don't know why they're there. And so this esports really gives them a sense of purpose and belonging to get them through high school and to set them up for a proper future. On top of that, the kids that come out of esports programs, they learn teamwork, leadership, communication, all of the things and all of the reasons you sent kids to camps for sports, to learn this leadership and communication. Some of these esports kids never get it. And so if they don't have an esports club, they're not going to learn those traits and behaviors, which is really unfortunate. And so it not only gives them sense of belonging, but it prepares them for a future, and it instills traits in them that are very important for their long-term success. So there's my quick rant on why esports should be in every single high school, because it's incredibly important. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything, Bubba.
Yeah, and it's it's not just the States. I mean, Randy Churchill, I know you're in the chat. Canada is obviously your market. I know you're in Harrisburg, but Canada there's 3,000 schools in North America we know have esports clubs, and a lot of those are in Canada. Quite a few Canada schools actually have won some of the national, the North American championships in esports. And I love hearing this stuff from Connor, because I've taken his course multiple times and I get to hear this fun stuff. And I think, the course that you can take through D&H is really good, which you can get a really great discount, I hear, right? Can you get a good discount? Yep. They're saying, yep, you can.
Very good.
Oh, very good discount, like half off. But I think when I look at all these positives, about about esports in the high school, middle school space, and even the college space. It's just the pipeline we're all here to support. And if you are supporting this pipeline, it's similar to traditional sports, but it's its own thing, really. It's its own bubble. It's its own opportunity, because we know that 82% of kids, when they're surveyed, when they are a part of esport clubs, 82% of them will say they're not a part of any other activity. So when Connor talks about belonging and inclusion, that ability is that opportunity to give those kids, that subset of kids who have no other activities they want to do, maybe they don't want to throw football or whatever, this gives them the opportunity. And I'll go to a question here from Danielle. She says, is starting a middle school program more beneficial to lead into a successful high school team? ? She also asked, do you think middle school administrators are more or less open to starting a league? Like starting in a league. So I would say middle school is huge right now. The high school space has been around for about 8 years with High School Esports League. They were the first league to get everything rolling. And then there's other groups that have come after them. And then the Middle School Esports League is a new thing, which you'll see over there. Let's see. You'll see over here, if you have it set up and the resources, the HSCL and the MSEL, the idea of getting esport clubs in your school, whether it be for high school or middle school. You can use those resources to help you engage. You can also take the Esports Education Network certification there that's on the teachable course there that will let you get a certification badge so you can go in. But I think when you're asking about how is it beneficial, it's 100% the pipeline. 100% the pipeline, because when Connor's recruiting in a college space and things like the Middle School Esports League and High School Esports League are around, and those students may come up playing Overwatch or Minecraft or Fortnite as a 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader, those stats and that data will track with them through high school, just like a football player will have. When you look at, we're in Kansas City, so we're going to talk a little bit about Patrick Mahomes because he's pretty awesome. And, Patrick Mahomes has stats from his years at Texas Tech, and then when he went to high school and his club and whatever, middle school, those stats are really helpful for recruiting. So in the sense of going to college is important, but I'll even say that middle school and high school kids actually get recruited to go pro, but that's a whole different atmosphere and a whole different level. Which I know Connor knows a lot more about, but the administrators in middle schools, they want to see belonging. As I know I love working with middle schoolers because that is really where you're defining who you are a lot in the middle school age, at 6th to 8th grade. And if students are trying to figure who they are, and we know 97% of them play video games, why not give them something they can engage in a safe environment?
Yeah, it really allows to engage those students. And then the other thing, Bubba did a great job explaining it, but the other reason middle school esports is really important and why we're trying really hard to start growing this scene is because, like Bubba said, this is when they're very impressionable. This is when they're really getting into things. And if we have an opportunity to put them in a controlled environment with a sponsor or a coach, we can actually start training them on how to behave online, how to interact with other people. The gaming community can be known as very toxic with how we treat each other or behave or whatnot. And those behaviors larger because this community is unchecked. When middle school kids are put in a room, not monitored, and they hear people acting one way online and they just think that's how they're supposed to act, we fall into this cycle of this toxic behavior. But if we can catch it early on, show them how video games should be played, how you should be acting, how it can be beneficial for your future, it kind of changes the narrative of gaming to a more professional, competitive environment like any other sport. So I think that's why it's also extremely important.
Yeah, I love it. This is fun. I hope you guys are getting a little bit out of this. I want to throw back into a little bit about what's been happening as well in the esports space during the pandemic. Well, as we know, NBA has been struggling to get their things together, as well as MLB with actual live sports. But we saw a really big uptick when something that was already happening was the NBA 2K League. And they really jumped on board with streaming live their tournaments where people could be all over the country. Because that's the benefit of esports. And what was fun was seeing like actual NBA players take part. But this NBA 2K League, and as well as NASCAR and Formula One racing across the world exploded. I think that was some of the big. That was actually some of the big traditional sports news. Was I don't remember if it was Formula One or NASCAR or something. It was like NASCAR, which that's their logo. This pro league really took off because they had a lot of people who typically would go to an actual NASCAR event or a big arena, or I guess grandstand, and they would watch those cars go around the track. Now they could watch it from the safety of their own home, which was nice. And
my wife ended up being pretty huge into the NASCAR because for some of the older NASCAR drivers came back, and she was a huge Jeff Gordon fan. So to even see Jeff Gordon virtually driving a car, she was all in on that. It was fun to see.
Well, it's almost more personal, right? Like you actually, I think people enjoyed it more because you actually got to see more personality and more of the people behind the scene, which is amazing for esports in general, because it shows why esports is so cool. Like you can go online, you can watch these personalities, and it showed like almost behind the scenes of what these guys are like, which is so cool.
Yeah, and definitely more interactive as well.
Yeah, that's the example I like to use is. And we'll talk about traditional sport athletes here in a minute, but the LeBron James can be on a court and you pay $1,000 for a courtside seat, and maybe you get some sweat on you or he falls on you. That's cool. But if LeBron James was streaming on Twitch and you could say, "Hey, LeBron, great, Fortnite build," or whatever he plays, or whatever, 2K or something.
$20 dono to dab.
Yeah. He's like, "Oh, thanks Keith for the donation."
Yeah, how's LeBron's Nikes in Fortnite? Like, what do we do in there?
It goes to the personability of access. So you can be in the nosebleeds at the arena and have no access to them, or you could pay $1,000, or you could download Twitch app and watch a real celebrity or athlete or influencer and engage with them for nothing or $5. So that's the Twitch model that has grown with streaming and Facebook gaming as well as YouTube gaming, is which I like to tell people is the radio model, the old radio model of, "Hey, Keith, longtime listener, first time caller, just want to say you got a great show. This is great. DHTV Live is amazing. Your staff is great. Just thanks for letting me call in." "Okay, hey, thanks, Bubba. Thanks for calling. Hey, Susie, did you hear I was on the radio?" Like it's that recognition. It's that recognition people want. Just like you want your brick in the walkway up to a school or whatever, you get your name on a brick. So when you donate on Twitch and a little alert pops up, like the polls did here a minute ago on the stream, like, hey, it could have said, "Hey, Bubba donated $5," and then Keith says, "Hey, thanks, Bubba." That interaction is why people are so engaged with watching streams, as well as kids watching Ninja play Fortnite so they can learn how to get better and they can watch what's happening, just like my buddy watched Tiger Woods learn how to play golf by just watching him on TV. And so we joke and we say, that's silly, my kids are sitting around watching on Fortnite, but then we go and turn on the football game and sit there and eat chips and drink beer and we're the ones perpetuating kids stay in the basement, right? Keith, I'll go ahead and answer these questions, and we'll move into the traditional sports. Rodney Hall says, on the business side, who do you target for the implementation of hardware, software, etc.? And I guess he means, business side of helping sell esports. I'm guessing that's right. What do you guys think?
I think
I'm figuring probably at the schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, 100%. The IT person is always the no man, as you probably already understand that. They're always a no man because I got to set up a firewall, or I got to do this or whatever, or I got to whatever. But usually the athletic director or the administrator is the cast vision and let's all do this sort of stuff. So you have to work with each school differently in the K-12 and college space. But I mean, we're also talking about LAN centers like and gaming centers like Connor opened. When you're definitely working with schools, it's the IT professionals, and this is something Connor covers in his certification on our website. about who to find as your champion, right, Connor?
Yeah. So there's a whole unit on this with our certification that you can take. What you're going to find, and what I talk about in that is IT directors are ultimately going to be who you work with. But the reality of it is, before you even talk to the IT director, you're going to want to make sure there's an esports program established or in the works. And so to get started with there, you're either going to be working with the athletic director or a sponsor or teacher. So what we talk about in that certification is how to find a sponsor. So maybe your school has a robotics or STEM course or something going on in that realm. Normally you can reach out to those guys, put out some feelers. Hey, what about starting an esports club? And they'll either say, yes, I'm all about it, or they'll at least know someone who would be interested. Then you can work with that sponsor or teacher on how to actually get a club started within the school. Most of the time, you're going to have to work with the athletic director to get it approved and get it added. Now, once it's added and once the administrative side is all gung-ho about adding this program, well, now you're already in. So now you just have to work with the IT director and the school on budget and making sure that you're getting the right stuff. But you're not going to get that yes from the IT director until you have the admin and the school side bought in on actually starting a program and why it's beneficial. So that would be my recommendation, is making sure you're going down that path first. One of the things we talk about in that course as well is how to pitch to those guys, why esports matters. One of the really cool pitches that we have in that course is, when you're approaching them, on average, a school will pay $500 per season for one of their school or one of their people to be involved in football. Well, when it comes to adding esports, even if you give these kids their own equipment, their own setups, like most expensive scenario, you're paying less than $250 per season for that kid to be involved in esports. So it's less than half the cost to give a student in high school the same exact experience that a kid is getting in the football program or basketball program. So if you can get the school side bought in on esports, you're going to talk to the IT director eventually about getting the equipment. But if you already have the in, if you already have the yes, that conversation becomes a lot easier.
So you guys have referenced this esports certification, but I don't think we've actually explained to the people that don't know what it is, what we're talking about here. So can you take a quick second and tell everyone what the DNH K-12 esports certification is?
Yeah, sorry. You're right. We probably should have started there. So a little while back, we partnered up with DNH to put out what we call the K-12 Esports Provider Certification. So what this certification does is gives it's designed for resellers through DNH to be able to go into schools and learn from A to B exactly how to get into the schools, start esports programs, and get equipment into those schools. So we take you all the way through from the very beginning of what is esports, video games versus esports, getting a baseline understanding. We're going to take you through why high school esports matters, the sense of belonging, the numbers behind it. We're then going to walk you through how HSEL and MSEL works, so you can understand how the leagues work, how these kids are going to be interacting. And then from there, we put on the salesman hat and we go into exactly how to sell esports. I'm going to walk you through different pitches and techniques to be able to sell to these people, exactly who the decision makers are and how you can get essentially a yes on esports. We're then going to walk through budgeting and how to prepare for what the school is going to be facing when it comes to starting an esports program. We walk through a little bit about equipment and different offerings that you should provide. And so it's basically the certification walks you through exactly how to go from having no schools in your district to having esports, to how to get all of them to say yes and to be purchasing equipment and building out full esports programs at all the schools.
And it sounds really great. And as Bubba mentioned earlier, you can get 50% off that training through DNH. All you need to do is provide your email and account number to esports@dnh.com, and we can get that set up for you. I also put out another poll question there to see what the interest looks like for taking that certification course.
Well, what did we get for an answer here? Are we going to look at the results? What do we think? Who has taken it? Who is cool? I know Tyler is has taken it. Oh, well, so not yet, planning on it. Thanks. And then no, hopefully that really cool speech from Connor makes you turn it to a not yet. But I'll also say you get this really cool badge that says D&H K-12 esports provider that you can put on your email, you can put on your LinkedIn, you can walk into a school and flip it open like Dragnet and say, "What's up? I'm here to sell esports. Get out of the way. We're here to mess things up." But yeah, so we're here for you guys.
It's a great starting off. Of our resellers that answered that they don't have any experience to esports in that first poll question. If you're looking for a starting point, it's a great resource, and I highly recommend people take a look at it.
I was going to say,
I think that's a good transition into the final thing we had prepared here before, if we just want to hop into Q&A.
Yeah, let me. I'll flash these really cool. The people that are engaged in traditional sports athletes. Zeke Elliott, as you know, is from the America's team. I grew up as a Cowboy fan in Oklahoma, but he streams with Ninja and all them, and people have access, like I was saying earlier. Something really cool that happened during COVID, that honestly happens a lot still, but Miles Leonard, he is a NBA player. He raised $70K during a 24-hour stream for Feeding America, and we did some Feeding America stuff with our social distancing cup partnership with Generation Esports and HSCL to raise money for them. And he raised $70K for helping people in need. And then lastly, not to be confused with Trevor May of D&H. I hear there's a Trevor May. What does he do? What does your Trevor May do? He's on the board or something?
He's vice president of purchasing.
There we go. So this guy isn't purchasing anything. He is a Minnesota pitcher, but he has been streaming. He's one of the guys with Ninja and all them who stream, but he has definitely been engaged with esports for a long time and being influencer. And so there's a lot of pro athletes. This is 0.01% of the amount of athletes that are actually doing stuff in the esports world or owning things. Like Rick Fox owns an esports team. So there's a lot of engagement, but COVID for sure had definitely I know for Trevor, when he first started when COVID was big, I was watching his streams and he said, "Well, we don't have any spring training right now, so I guess I'll just dive even deeper." He was already streaming, but he dove deeper. But people like Zeke and Miles got in because of COVID. Do you want to go with those questions before we talk about schools and during COVID?
Yeah, we can do that. What do we got? What did I miss?
Tyler asked about the community standards, and I say for community standards, yes, community standards in the sense of rules and toxicity, and especially with leagues. A lot of leagues, if that's where you're going with that, Tyler, is a lot of leagues will have rules and guidelines based on your competition and your chat and your how you interact, because you can be banned pretty quickly. So there's a lot of rules in place, but because there's rules in place and there's consequences, it's extremely low that kids actually engage in that kind of toxicity or racism or anything like that, because those standards are there. Danielle says, if schools' parents are opting for virtual education, okay, I like where this is going so far, how will schools need to pivot their esports program to remain engaged and successful? I'll touch on this real quick and say the one-to-one device thing that I think everybody's involved in with schools right now is a big deal. Getting them things like iPads and Chromebooks may not be the best option for esports if they're taking it home, but any kind of other laptop probably has a good. I'm not sure if I'm actually exactly true here. I'm not the expert like you guys on what you can play, but if there's virtual learning and there's esports, typically, as we'll cover here in a little bit, kids may or may not have access already. So we'll cover that here in a minute, actually.
Yeah, that's actually a perfect question to segue into this next slide, I believe.
I'll go to it.
Yeah, if you want to pull that up. So we actually prepared some of this. So as far as how esports was handled at the K-12 and higher education level through this whole pandemic. So I think it's the next slide here. So what we saw essentially in the esports market at the K-12 level was interesting, because we did see a fall in registration numbers, a decent percent lower than what it would have been last year. However, that is an incredibly high number when compared to every single other sport this spring, which was 0. So when every other sport got canceled, we still saw over 50%, I believe it was, of esports programs at the K-12 level still competing from home. And really the difference between the programs that were able to continue competing and the programs that had to stop competing was one-on-one devices. So even if they aren't competing on the one-on-one device, let's say they want to play in a tournament for Rainbow Six on PlayStation or Xbox, you still need access to internet and a machine to be able to register for the tournament and to engage with your coach or your team. And so it definitely was a big benefit to have one-on-one machines. And then also how well the school was prepared to go online, because the schools that were bogged down with trying to put everything online and were way too busy trying to figure out how to even educate the kids, they put all secondary stuff on hold, which meant that their teacher was not also going to be running an after-school program when they didn't even know how to teach online, essentially. So if the schools were a little bit more prepared, and definitely the schools that had one-on-one devices, they were all well-equipped to continue competing in esports. At the college level, we saw the same thing. It was actually a little bit higher. Very few programs actually dropped out because of the pandemic. We all just went online. Most of our recruits have access to gaming equipment at home. Obviously, they're really good. That's why we recruited them. But we also saw a lot of programs that if their students didn't have access or were worried that they weren't going to have quality equipment at home, schools actually checked out their gaming equipment. So at the college level, we all have gaming labs, most of us, with all of our gaming equipment. And so because the school shut down, we actually allowed some of our students to take home the equipment to make sure that they could continue practicing. And we just use online tools to be able to do virtual coaching and scrimmage. And it essentially operates the same as in person, other than me looking over the shoulder of the players and having in-person reviews. It's just all done online. So an overwhelming amount of esports activity remained the same through the pandemic, which was really cool to see.
Yeah. Then
out of curiosity, I'm going to put out another poll question real quick to see how many of the schools had one-to-one devices before COVID.
Oh yeah, throw that out. So what percentage of your schools had one-to-one devices for students before COVID? That'll be good. I'll throw out this other slide here, and what I know Connor's been working on for a long time is the numbers of students. And can you talk a little more about that, Connor, and the number of students without access?
Yeah, so as you see in the slide here, what we saw through the pandemic was this wasn't a new issue, but it was the first time it was really being addressed, which is how many American households can't afford or don't have access to internet. I think it sounds silly to a lot of us because we've grown up for a long time with access to internet, and the reality of it is 40 million Americans don't have access to internet at home. And what was more frightening was 9 million of them were in the K-12 system trying to do distance learning without internet. And obviously it's no fault to them. There's not much they can do there, but that was the reality of the situation. And so that's something that I've been passionate about, trying to help these kids get access to internet and solving this issue. And that's something that you guys can solve as well through one-on-one devices, hotspotting, solutions that can get these kids connected. Because what we found that was extremely frightening is going forward, even when we're through the pandemic, when these kids go home and if they don't have access to the internet, they're still out of luck when it comes to homework, research. I mean, Google, when these kids are going home, applying for colleges and scholarship applications, they're at such a disadvantage this day and age if they don't have access to all of that when they go home. And that's where esports programs can come in, as well as they give an after-school program to give these kids access to equipment that their household may not be able to provide for them. Most families can have a basketball to throw around, but it's an overwhelming task to ask parents to come up with $1,000, $2,000 for gaming equipment for their kid to be able to, do what he loves. And so it's another big perk of having esports programs.
Yeah, I'll throw out one question I saw Rodney Hall, about creating rivalries. I don't know if he was talking about Kansas City and the Cowboys, but maybe he's talking about what we do here is how can esports create rivalry in schools? Well, I think it 100% does, because, you're on a national level, you can play against schools all across the country. When you have particular opportunities with different leagues like HSCL or MSCL, you can play schools right down the street on their platform, or you can set up something where you're actually going to their school. And let's say for you guys, I think a big selling point for the resellers here is being able to sell esport labs and arenas where teams from other schools can come over and compete and bring some of their setups and make them a little, things are great on your carts to bring over, but maybe they need boxes to transport. That's something they probably not all will do, but there are a lot of schools out there wanting to do that. They want to compete at a local level, and they can either stay at their own computer lab so they can play at home, or they can take equipment with them or to go compete at schools right down the street or in their actual conference, so to speak, for the traditional sports. And those rivalries are there for that. There's a lot of rivalries in competitive esports, the high school level across the country already. That's a national level with thousands and thousands of dollars of scholarships. But a lot of these rivalries in local spaces happening in college space, it's definitely there because that's what colleges have a bit more of a credibility to be able to have esports arenas and have fan following than maybe a high school does, because it's not in a basketball arena with banners up on the wall and scoreboards and people, booster club. It's not the same completely yet in all schools, but it's happening in quite a few. I can think of some in Texas for sure, and Burleson ISD. They've got like 7 esport labs, and they've got a Super Smash Brothers pro player who's one of their coaches at one of their schools, and they have the ability to do things in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to compete locally and partner with big esport companies. So there's a lot. The esports segment, or the channels on where you can sell, is definitely in the K-12 space, in the the community space, the college space. There's a lot of opportunities there.
So,
yeah,
question, and along the lines of building rivalries within esports, what kind of role does social media play, especially when you're talking about esports at the middle school and high school level? Is that something that is used to kind of just get students a little bit more involved with the team's doing, or do they use some of that to maybe build rivalries with other schools? Anything like that?
Yeah. I don't think middle school level, they're too young. You're going to want all of your users to be over 13. But at the high school level, we've seen a lot more recently Twitter accounts pop up with a lot more banter and engagement, which I love, of Twitter accounts with these high school programs that showcase their students and showcase what's going on there, and they're starting to engage with like colleges, and I think more so the bigger reason you want to be on like Twitter and social media as a high school esports program is because of the network that it builds. So this gives high schoolers access to maybe scrimming some college teams or some amateur teams. It builds up rivalries like you talked about, which is just fun for everyone to have some good banter and some good engagement with other schools, and really just the true competitive nature. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys are competitors like everyone else, and social media allows you to kind of have fun with it, and also trains you on what to be looking for, especially depending on what these kids want to do. So I don't know if everyone on this call is aware, hopefully you are at this point, that college scholarships are incredibly popular in the esports space right now, and they're growing every single year. So these high schoolers can and are getting scholarships to go to college, and social media is a great way for them to be found. The other thing is, if the kid's really good, social media is how you can earn tryouts for semi-pro teams or path to pro, or even get found for professional teams. I mean, there's already high schoolers that are making millions of dollars off of video games. That's the extreme rarity. I don't want to make that sound like that's realistic for most kids, but it's the reality, and that's all fostered through social media, which is, yeah, that's a good point to bring up.
I like this question from Johnny. And Johnny, I know you're in Tennessee. I just looked you up on LinkedIn. I just friended you because I guess that's the term for LinkedIn. Friending, is that right? Connecting.
Connected.
And we're totally connected. So I like what he asked about. Hey, I've been selling equipment for 20 years, and I've been in streaming equipment recently as well for organizations, but he's not a gamer. He asked, is it important to be a gamer to help sell to schools? Well, I think the benefit here is not being a gamer, but being more literate about gaming and esports. And I think people who look like me and who are older than me as well, who can go into a school and probably sell stuff, have probably a better chance than somebody like Connor, who's 20. What are you, 25 now? What are you, 12, 25? 20, something like
Hey,
that.
I had three gray hairs this week that I had to pluck. Thank you very much.
Aging like Benjamin Button. He'll be a teenager next week.
So funny. Yep. Yeah. So in the sense of somebody like me or somebody older than me coming in to an administrator who's been in the school for X amount of years, or the district, who, you know, oh my gosh, here comes a salesperson. But if you're going in and using the tools that Connor gives you in the sense of how to give kids belonging and how to help them, and you're more literate about that to help spread the message of the benefit of esports, rather than I'm just here to maybe help you get computers because I know you need it, and you might need a new projector, and you might need all this other stuff. I mean, esports is what robotics was 10 years ago. And robotics is huge now with first robotics groups like those that you're then potentially selling TVs and other things, and even scoreboards or something, because they're keeping track of all sorts of stuff when they're doing robotics. But I would say, do you have to be a gamer? No, I think it's fine that you're not. I mean, be who you are. But if you're a gamer, it doesn't hurt. I know Tyler on the chat is probably a Uber gamer and a Uber nerd, and he has plenty to talk about. He'll talk about Overwatch for days.
Yeah, Bubba, I want to hop in here because this is such a good question. And I actually would argue, like you kind of just said, it's better that you're not a gamer. And for people that are really big gamers, you have to check it, because what you're not doing when you're talking about selling high school esports is talking about video games and how great playing video games are and how much you love video games. That's the last thing anyone wants to hear. What you're actually selling is sense of belonging, community, competition, and opportunities. You're reaching students that aren't being reached with an activity that they're already doing, so that they can go on to get better placement into colleges, to improve their GPA, and to have just a better time at their high school. That's what you're selling. The more you can stay off of video games, the better. The fact that you don't like them is actually a huge selling point, because you aren't selling video games. You aren't telling kids to just go play more video games. You're taking kids who are already playing video games, because everyone in high school is playing video games, organizing it, teaching them, and opening up opportunities for them. That's what you're actually selling. So that's such a great question. And no, you could kill it. You could kill it in the high school esports space.
Yeah, from
100%.
the sales side, on the hardware side, the other thing I would say is the only thing you need to know about the games is what the minimum requirements in a machine is. Beyond that, I'd agree. You don't need to know the games inside and out by any means.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talk about in the course too, is knowing what games you're going to be playing, because depending on what games you're going to be playing, changes drastically what kind of equipment you're going to be outfitting them with and what their budget's going to look like. A lot of schools might just run a Super Smash Brothers, which doesn't even need computers. Some schools will be very heavily involved in Overwatch and Fortnite, which requires a lot stronger computers. So that's part of the training, is figuring out with the school exactly what the requirements are going to be for their esports program.
I'll throw in this slide here. You have a very amazing opportunity here. When we know, I think when HSCL, Jason Kirby, and I went down to Houston to go to meet with the K-12 advisory board, I know quite a few people were there that are on the call. Rhonda and Tyler, I think Keith were there, and Julia Stewart, who might be on the call. Just understanding where you guys have seen the kind of like, go back to that poll question, going back to that question of, are your schools asking for it? Well, I know from what I understood, there's 3 years ago, nobody wanted to raise their hand when they said, hey, is esports something in your schools that people are asking about? Nobody. Like maybe 2 years ago, a lot more people raised their hand. And last year, you guys brought us in to talk. So then we started this whole opportunity. And I know it's fun to work with a lot of you guys, a lot of your resellers, because we've grown great relationships with them who all sell really good products for schools. And I think the opportunity for you guys is because schools are going to be continually asking for this. And because of COVID, it's accelerated the need for something in competition. You can compete in esports at home with your computers if you have access, with your coach, and still be able to compete when maybe the football coach can only give practice routines and not compete because of COVID. So esports definitely has an opportunity.
Real quick, the slide that you're looking at, that picture is not that is not a professional scene that happened somewhere else or whatever. That picture is from my college program here in Ottawa, Kansas. So that is the scale of what esports is looking like already at the college level. That was all. Just want to throw that in there.
And that's cool. A pretty good arena. Go ahead.
Yep, all good.
All right. Well, also, like talking on the hardware side of things, for our D&H resellers, I mean, we have a ton of different vendors here at D&H to help you kind of fill out your esports packages, whether it be for middle school, K-12, higher education. Especially on the higher education, they're looking at digital signage and things of that nature. Couple to throw out there, like Lenovo, Intel, we've got Lenovo Predator here, Asus, Acer, NVIDIA. These are all great partners that you can partner with through D&H to kind of build out that program and build out that hardware for your schools or whoever you have the esports program with. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you have any questions about any of that stuff, esports@dnh.com is a great resource, and we can sure to help you out with any questions you might have in that front.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say.
Looks like we have one last question in here.
Yeah.
Someone wants to grab that from Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan and I connected. He's at Regent University, and I know he's got questions, best tips. I think in the sense of college, it's a different approach, even from the sense of you're already on school. So sometimes I look back at my world in the YMCA days, where as a staff person, I would say, hey, we need this in our YMCA. We need this in our YMCA. But then a member would come up, or somebody from the outside would come up and say, hey, we need this. And they would get done. So when I think about sometimes the coaches or the teachers or the educators in a school don't have the same ability that sometimes a outsider can come in and say, like if they took our What is Esports course, they can learn about that. And that way they can hear it from somebody else besides maybe the teacher or the educator or the coach. Sometimes people don't want to hear have a salesperson come in, but if you're coming in with a certification, you're coming in with this badge, you're coming in saying, I know what I'm talking about, and I'd love to help you, and I'd love to help your students. That sells a lot more. So the best tips I give, Nathan, is probably to connect with any of these folks at D&H and help them, see if they can help you engage with your administration.
I would throw in too, opportunities is huge for every university, and competition is what drives that. So I would do a quick check on what schools around you already have esports and what that looks like to build a competitive landscape, because that's going to go a long ways with like your athletic director, for example, if you want to try to get your AD involved. And you can say, hey, this many schools are already popping up this. On average, it's bringing in 15 new students a year, first year, with a growth potential of 40 to 50 brand new students. If that's your university's goal is enrollment, that's huge. If your goal is not enrollment, but student engagement, or just back to competition. If you guys have a rival school that you're always butting heads with, and now all of a sudden they launch esports, that gives you an opportunity to smash them at esports. So I would build in the competition and opportunity section of that pitch.
And lastly, great question.
Much, guys.
Sorry, question from Rodney. You can find out the information by using the resources. Definitely take that course and you'll learn all about the CPU, RAM, monitor size, hertz, and all that stuff in Connor's Unit 8 when you get through that.
Yeah, guys, and if talking about resources, there's a lot of great resources out there from D&H right now that should be listed out to the side with links. There's the esports mini site page. There's the link to do our training that you can get 50% off with D&H. And another quick thing to mention about that training is once you're certified, any questions the VEF or High School Esports League get coming in, they'll put those out to you guys as leads. So that's another great benefit of that training course. Then there's a ton of other great websites out there, MSEL, HSEL, Varsity Esports Foundation. and the Esports Education Network are all linked up there. You can find most questions and most of the answers you have, or you can always contact esports@dnh.com for those. For our next Threadcast is going to be Wednesday, September 29th and Thursday, September 30th. We're going to focus on flexible workspace as being adopted by SMBs due to COVID and educational institutions, and forcing a hybrid business and learning environment. More info will be available for that soon at dnh.com/threadcast. Thanks all for your time, and have a good afternoon.